Welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa, where we talk about financial empowerment while exploring financial assistance available through local, state, and federal governments each month with a diverse group of subject matter experts. Chicago, are you ready to get financially empowered? Well, we've got just what you need. Without further ado, give it up for your Chicago City Treasurer, Melissa Conyears-Ervin.
Be before us now, and we have a great panel that will be before us now, being led by our Deputy City Treasurer. I certainly, as the City Treasurer, I wish I could do it all by myself. I cannot. So I have a great team, and one of those individuals is our Deputy City Treasurer, James Ramos, that will be leading our next panel on today. And James has a deep passion for financial health, tools, resources to help our community. He helped lead the team that led this event on today. And so let's give it up for James Ramos. As well as I am so excited that we have a black woman, the first black woman to lead the Municipal Pension Fund for the city of Chicago. Tiffany Junkins is in the house on today. First black woman to lead the Municipal Pension Fund. She's responsible for making certain that the municipal employees of Chicago have a pension when they retire. Next, we have Peter Estevez that is in the house. Woo! Peter is an entrepreneur and philanthropist, and he is dressed to impress. When I saw Peter in the back, I said, well, you understood the assignment. So let's give it for Peter Estevez. This is a diverse panel. This is the world that we live in. This is what we see. And we're going to talk about unity on today. We live in a divided world, and it's time that we work together to unify together because we're only better together. And let's give it up for this panel.
Good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, let's get into this. We're going to talk about black and brown American buying power. But before we get started, I want to really paint a picture of what we're really talking about here. So in 2025, black Americans spent their buying power $2.1 trillion. What does that mean? If we were to compare $2.1 trillion within the world economies, it'll be larger than Canada and South Korea. So think about that. Latino buying power in the United States, $2.5 trillion. That would be larger than Mexico and Australia. But imagine if we were to combine the black and Latino American buying power. It will be the third largest economy in the world behind the United States and China. So this is what we're really talking about, ladies and gentlemen, something that's extremely large. Our money, the money that we spend every day. But let's get into it. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
You have built and exited multi-million-dollar businesses throughout your lifetime. But you started with very little. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the beginning of your understanding of money, wealth, and the importance of financial wellness.
Thank you, James, and thank you, City of Chicago, for having me, and thank you, Lady Treasurer, for the invitation. I'm one of 13 children. I grew up in a very small two-bedroom, one-bath frame home. I saw my father work 40, 70 hours a week, sun up and sundown, but I never saw him invest 40 minutes understanding the basic principles of how money works, how money grows, and how money multiplies. For a long time, I thought that was an issue that was isolated to my household. But as I entered the business world, I realized that is not an issue isolated to my household, to my community, or to a race. That is a great issue. We are not, any of us are never been taught how money works, how money grows, or how money multiplies. We have never been taught the basic principles of financial literacy, financial planning, or creating a pathway to financial freedom. We've been left out in the dark when it comes to these issues. And I have started a movement many years ago to make sure that these conversations become mainstream conversations, that we give silence a voice.
That's very good, Peter. As Madam Treasurer mentioned, I am one of the executive directors of the pension fund for the city of Chicago. And I see firsthand how policies really play into families and institutions that are being built here. I just wanted to know if you can talk a little bit more about what you see firsthand and how we can go ahead as Black and brown communities kind of get the leg up when it comes to investing institutionally.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that we see is that we have become consumers, okay? We certainly know how to earn it, but we know how to burn it very quickly, okay? And the world has changed. We live in a world that, number one, longevity has increased by an average of 25 to 35 years. We live in a world where we are suffering for hyperinflation. Our communities are not prepared for these changes. You know, the average income in 2000, in the year 2000, if you earn $100,000, that is equivalent to today to earning less than $48,000. Think about that for a second. Just think about the individual that is making $40,000 today. That means that their buying power is less than $20,000. That's why you see many families where father works, mother works, and the children work. And to combat that, mother and the children have a part-time job or a side hustle just to make ends meet. Over 54% of Americans today have a part-time job or a side hustle just to pay the bills each and every single month. 2 out of 4 Americans are one paycheck away from bankruptcy, and 1 out of 3 are in severe, severe debt. Financial education is a must. It's not an option, it's a must. It's something that needs to become mainstream in our education system today.
Thank you. So those are some serious stats, ladies and gentlemen. So this next question is for the two of you. When we talk about breaking generational wealth, what barriers do you still believe prevent Blacks and Latinos from moving from spending to wealth creation? I'm going to repeat that question. What barriers do Black and brown Americans have from moving from spending to creating wealth?
James, I think that's important when we start talking about building generational wealth. But before we even get there, we need to have a good understanding and relationship with money. I'm going to say that again. We need to have a good relationship with money. When I grew up at a time where we didn't talk about money in our household, only to say, I would ask my mom, can I have some money? And my mom would say, I don't have any. Right? That was the only conversation when I grew up that we had with money. And so as I grew up and you learn more, you tend to do better. And as I've done better, now I can sit here and I can talk about money, the power of money, what money can do, what we need money for, quite frankly. So it's very important to make sure that when we're having these conversations in our household, we're talking about from a three-pronged approach. We should be talking about budgeting our money. Budgeting is important. It is important to understand the assets and the income that you have coming in, and also understanding the expenses that match that are going to be going out the door, and making sure that there's some alignment across. In addition to talking about and having healthy conversations about budgeting, you also need to make sure that you're saving. Saving doesn't have to be a whole bunch. It's what you can do with the money that you have. I remember when I first started working for the city of Chicago back in 2005, I didn't have a lot of money. But one of the things I believed in was saving, putting some away for another day. And I remember starting with $10 out of my paycheck. Again, it wasn't a whole lot, but the power of compounded interest, the power of compounding has made that grow substantially. The power of understanding and having a better relationship with money has also made me put more in, right? So that dollars eventually grew. Whenever I would get a raise, I also give my savings account a raise because it needs to see more money. Now I'm maxing out my savings account. I want to put more in, James, and I can't. But budgeting, saving is important. And then the last prong we need to make sure that we're talking about in our households is investing. I know. It's one of those subjects where maybe people need a little bit more information, but I want to make sure that folks understand that those are the conversations we should be having in our homes so that our young people, that they understand high yield savings accounts, not just putting in your money in a regular savings account, making sure that it's growing interest and building on itself. The power of compounding is so important, and as we start to build and think about generational wealth building, we want to make sure that we're not only content, but we want to be at peace with the decisions that we're making. We want to make sure that financial health and our financial wellness is top of mind when we're thinking about how we can go ahead and survive. Peter, what about you?
Well, the barriers that we're facing, James, to your question from the beginning, is education, is information, is financial literacy, and is mentorship. This have never ever been mainstream in our communities, okay? Especially when it comes to money. It has been a taboo to talk about money. We need to make this a mainstream conversation. Secondly, we need to not just budget or save. Saving is not investing and it's not preparing for the future. We need to really allocate a position to every dollar that comes in. How the money comes in, how the money goes out. We need to really allocate and study how we are spending our money on a daily basis. What we realize is that we live in a world where every dollar counts today. We are stretching, families are stretching each and every single month just to make ends meet. However, we live in the power of information where many instruments for creating wealth have been democratized, digitized, and demonetized, where options for investing have become mainstream. They just have not reached many of our communities. We need to educate our communities into what tools and resources are readily available for us to start early on, to start very early on in planning, in saving, in investing, and in compounding our investments. There is a vehicle for each and every single one of us, but we need to discover what that vehicle is and how to apply it into our families' economies.
So even though I was the one who asked the question, I want to add to the answer. So when I think about my own personal barriers when I was younger, and I'm sitting here and looking at all the resources behind us, sometimes we're embarrassed, right? Sometimes we're embarrassed because we have bad credit. Sometimes we're embarrassed because we don't have a lot of money to save. Sometimes we're embarrassed because we don't make a lot of money. We need to stop thinking about how embarrassing it may be and really seek to help. So that's a personal barrier. Our way of life, the way we think sometimes can hinder us from generational wealth or from building some type of wealth within you. So please, 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 please connect with as many businesses back there, as many not-for-profits, as many banks as possible in order for you to take that next step. Regardless if you have bad credit, regardless if you don't make a lot of money, regardless if you have, a lot of credit card debt. It does not matter. Do not let that be a barrier. Okay. Next question. Let's talk about spending power and market influence. How do you see industries kind of, how do we see companies when we talk about Black and Latino buying power, how do you think companies in this particular country think of our buying power?
Is that a question for me, James?
Yeah, you can start out with you, Peter.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, many companies see us as consumers. You just said it when with your opening statement. Our combined contribution to the U.S. GDP is about $6 trillion. Our combined purchasing power. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. What companies need to see us is as partners, as people. They need to invest in us. They need to make us partners. They need to allow us to grow with them, okay? They cannot just use us as a consumer base, okay? They need to use us as a partner to reach our market and maximize the potential of our marketplace. We are the largest growing populations in the United States combined, okay? We have the youngest population in the United States combined, average 17 years old, compared to non-Hispanics or blacks, which is the average about 37 years old, or non-Hispanics or blacks whites, which is approximately 63 years old. So we have a long ways to go. We have a very, very young population, and we need to become their partners. They need to invest in us. They need to work with us. They need to provide us with opportunities to grow, and they need to continue to mentor our communities to become better stewards of our money.
Tiffany?
Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said, Peter. Our buying power is rich here. Again, as being a public pension fund in the city of Chicago, I have approximately 26,000 retirees and beneficiaries every month who rely on us at the pension fund to make wise decisions and investments with their money. But what we wind up putting back out there into the atmosphere for those 26,000, we put out about $1.2 billion on an annual basis back to our retirees so that they can go ahead and spend in the Chicago economy. That's powerful. We want to make sure that people understand that they should be heard, right? They're pumping money into the economy with their retirement checks, and we want to make sure that they're going to be respected and that they're having conversations with the right people so that we can understand what we need to do to make sure that we build a better and stronger economy.
So you talked about, you alluded to this a little bit earlier about talking about money at home. You know, when I was growing up, it was about we need money to pay bills, and that was it. Or sometimes there's a relative that may owe my mother or my father money, or my mom took out a loan somewhere. But what are some real strategies that you can tell the audience about how to literally start having those conversations right now?
I'll go ahead and start off, Peter. I say this, it doesn't take a whole lot of money in order to get started. We talked about the power of compounding. I think that that's important to understand that your money can actually make money. And just having money, I remember when I was growing up and I would see my father sometimes he wore his pockets kind of hanging out, right? To say he didn't have any money. But my father didn't keep his money in his pockets. He actually kept his money in his sock. So you had to understand and know, right? Our money isn't growing though right there in the sock. Just like it's not growing in the wall, it's not growing in that mattress. We want to make sure that we're making steps institutionally to safeguard our money and also be able to watch that money flourish and grow. And there's absolutely things that we can do. When I talked about savings, you know, generally a lot of these banks who are here, who are represented today, are good financial resources. But we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions. Just having your money in a regular savings account is not going to cut it. You've seen it, where you're only getting a couple of cents every quarter on your money. You know, we have to go ahead and make sure that we're changing mindsets in and around our money and the relationships that we have with it. And so instead, if you have money that's sitting in the bank, let's talk about those high yield savings accounts. Let's talk about maybe locking that money in CDs for a short period of time, for extended periods of time. It all depends on where you are and how long you can afford to kind of be without that money, right? And actually be able to watch that money grow over time. Once you start seeing that money grow, you're going to want to save more. You're going to want to lock it up a little bit more. There's all types of ETF vehicles for us.
What is ETF?
Well, so we invest in ETFs and also future mutual funds at the City of Chicago. And ETF is just a fancy word for electronic fund transfers. We wind up transferring money electronically. You guys do it all the time. Even when you think about when you're Zelling money from one place to the next, right? But imagine being able to go ahead and transfer your money and have your money sit where it's going to, again, make money for you. And it can be a liquid asset that you can go ahead and actually have access to it when you need to. So, again, there's these vehicles that you have access to, but I need you to start those conversations, if you haven't already, with the banking institutions that you do business with. That way they can go ahead and talk to you about the best route for you. Everybody's going to be different in how they're going to go ahead and keep their money. I have multiple CDs going on at the same time because I never know how much money I can lock up at one instance. So multiple CDs, different maturity dates. But again, I know that that money is there for me to be able to access when I need it.
Peter?
As Tiffany alluded, financial planning is individual and family specific. It's not one size fits all, okay? Everybody has a different need, a different plan, a different age, a different goal. There's 6 basic financial principles to wealth creation. And that's where you start. Number 1 is you need to make more money, okay? What I learned today is that you done cutting the Starbucks, you stop going to the movies, you stop going out to dinner, you stop buying cars, you stop going on vacations. That means that you need to start making more money. So you need to increase your income. Number 2, you need to reduce your debt. Whatever debt you have, particularly credit card debt. That is compound interest in reverse working against you. 22, 24, 28% interest. You need to get rid of that. Number 3, you need to create an emergency fund. If something happens to you today, if you get ill, if you get sick, you need to have a runway. You need to have a way to be able to take care of yourself and take care of your family. Number 4, you need proper protection. You need health insurance and you need life insurance. Many of us in our community do not prescribe to life insurance because we see that as a negative taboo. Today, life insurance comes with living benefits, means that it takes care of you if something happens to you while you're still alive. So you need proper protection. And then once you have done 1 through 4, then you start thinking about investing. Then you start thinking about wealth creation. And once you started your investment plan, then you look at number 6, which is how do you protect your investment? How do you transfer your investment? How do you create a legacy? But you need to do 1 through 4 before you do 5 and 6. And those are individual, specific formats for each and every single one of us. The best thing that I can suggest to you is talk to a financial advisor. It doesn't matter where we're at, whether it's at your bank, whether it's somebody that you call on the phone, whatever it is, find out where you're at today. Now, you've done the first step, because none of us can expand our own vision. But by being here today and listening to this type of conversation, it gives you an opportunity to change your paradigm. And you've done the first thing today. So keep coming to events like this, keep learning, and then look at those 6 steps.
Thank you. So that leads to my next question. How can public leaders and entrepreneurs maximize the economic power of our own communities?
I think public leaders absolutely have a seat at the table. They have a seat at the table that maybe some of us don't necessarily have access to. And I think as public leaders, I think they have a responsibility to be able to speak up for our Black and brown communities in terms of what we need to be able to get over the hump, to be able to get to that next stage or that next level. Look, a lot of us were struggling or have struggled, right? And we're just trying to go ahead and get to the next stage in life. Maslow's hierarchy of needs often talk about making sure those basic needs are being met. And so our basic needs being shelter, water, warmth, right? Those very basic things. We can then actually move on into making sure that we have some sense of security, our property, things are being protected, that we can feel a sense of protection. And then we can start worrying about these higher level things, such as saving, investing, and budgeting. But those are conversations our elected officials are absolutely having. Madam Treasurer has put together this amazing event that allows us to bring resources right to you. You don't have to go ahead and go out to get it. But I do say, let's make sure that we're having those follow-up conversations individually to be able to express what our needs are. I think it's very important to be very vocal about what you need. As I grew up, home ownership it was more of an idea. And now I think home ownership is a necessity. I own my own home. I've been in my own home for about 17 years. And I tell you, that is an asset that keeps on appreciating for me. I remember buying a home. It was only $125,000, $135,000.
That's
my
it?
home, that was it back then, 16, 17 years ago. Now my home is worth almost $400,000. It is absolutely an asset that keeps on giving. It's going to give back to me. If I need to be able to access an equity line of credit, I know that I can do that through my home ownership. You can't do that as a renter. But I also want to say I never want to put down renting, because guess what? I rented for a very long time before I was able to actually get into home ownership. But I do think that that is a great vehicle when we're talking about trying to make sure that we can get a leg up. It's making sure home ownership can be an option for us. And there's all types of programs out there that can give you that leg up. You don't have to go into it alone. I've gotten help through neighborhood housing services, and there's many other like neighborhood housing services that help people just like you and I to be able to purchase homes. And if that's open to you and available to you, start having those conversations with your elected officials about what you need. And I'm sure there's going to be a vehicle to go ahead and create those opportunities.
Peter?
Government creates policy, and entrepreneur creates economic opportunities. And obviously, the Treasurer's Office is doing an incredible job being in the community and being part of the community and creating information havens for people to change their lives. We don't need another program. We don't need another program. We need collaboration. We need education. We need opportunities in our communities. We need to teach people the basic principles. And you're going to hear me say this over and over and over and over again, because the conversation about money is more vital today than it has ever been. That is a common thread that defines the house you live in, the school your children go to, the food that you eat, your future, your retirement, everything that you do in your life. So do not be afraid to talk about this issue. It is vital today that our government and the private and public sectors have an alliance, have a collaboration, and have this type of conversations, because neither one of us can do it alone. It needs to be a partnership, not a new program.
Thank you. So Tiffany and Peter talked about something that's extremely interesting. Tiffany talked about the power of buying a home. Peter mentioned the power of making sure you secure your assets. This past summer, and this is something for every single one of you, if you're in this situation, please have this conversation with your families. This past summer, 2 families, the elders of the family moved on, transitioned, and the kids were left with an asset, a home. The problem was, in one particular situation, the kids didn't want the home. The other one, the kids could not afford to keep the home.
Wow.
So please, if you are in those situations, to protect that asset so that it can be something that could be passed on to the next generation. Because what we find in our communities, that it doesn't get passed on. Personally, the house that I grew up in, it was, my father purchased it for $39,000 in Humboldt Park. Just sold for $950,000.
Wow.
Now, my father sold that house a long time ago, moved to Puerto Rico. My aunt had it, and my cousin, when she passed away, lost that property.
Wow.
You know, there was no conversation with the family because we all would have pitched in to help them, but have those conversations. Generational wealth is about setting up for the next generation, having the right tools. Thank you for that. Okay, let's continue. And this goes into the next, this question transitions because how do Black and brown communities across this country trust institutions like banks and pensions and credit unions that can help their financial future? So how can we trust the financial institutions to help us build our financial future?
Well, I think that's a very good question, but I'm going to tell you relationship building is so important. Relationship building is very important. I don't know about you, but I still like to walk into the bank, even though I get direct deposit.
Me too.
I like to be able to talk to the bankers, the tellers, the managers that run the facility. I like to be able to talk to the security guard when I'm passing through. I have a relationship with my banking institution. When I walk in, they already know. I don't need to show them my ID. They know who I am. And they know that Tiffany comes in on a regular basis to talk about money. And it's not just my accounts. Obviously, I can see those and access those from my phone. But building relationships is so important. I appreciate when I build those relationships, and there are certain interest rates that I could take advantage of when it comes to maybe an additional certificate of deposit, a CD or something like that. They're eager to go ahead and tell me about things that I can take advantage of in the bank because they understand me as a person and what I'm trying to do with my finances. And they understand that growth and continuity is important for my money. And so when you build those relationships, you start to trust. They start to trust you, you start to trust them. Also, our money is federally protected. So when I go back to how my father used to keep his money in his sock, right? That's not protected. But if I have my money in a bank that is FDIC insured, then I know that my money in there is secure. Even if that branch were to fall down to the ground, my money is still protected. And I understand that, again, it's being electronically saved. That's important for you to know that your money's going to be there when you need it. That's important for you to understand that you have certain protections that are out there, especially when it comes to cyber frauds and security frauds. But building those relationships are very important, and having banking relationships with people that you trust are doubly important.
Absolutely. Every bank, every investment company, every insurance company is federally insured and protected. Okay, and your money is safe and protected. It's more safe and protected today than it has ever been. Rarely do you see a case or where a bank or an insurance company or a financial institution has defrauded a consumer. That's rarely. There's more of the reverse, right? We see more of the reverse. We're under scrutiny every single day, all of us, including the banking institutions, including the financial institutions. So from that regard, I think we're fairly safe. Tiffany says something that is very important. My father didn't have a lot of money, but that little bit of money that he had, either it was inside a Folgers can. Who remembers those Folgers cans? Okay, or under my mother's mattress. It was one of those two places. Had that house caught on fire, okay, that money was gone. It's just that simple. And you know, we are creatures of habit. You would be surprised how many individuals in this room today still keep money at home, okay, or keep it in a simple interest account where it's really depreciating every day. Simple interest earning 2% when we live in a hyperinflation of anywhere between 3.5% and 4%. Okay, so financial institutions are safe. Building a relationship is severely, severely important. Being informed and educated is doubly important. And I don't think there's much that we need to worry from that perspective, James.
Very good. How do we strengthen the alliance between Black and brown communities across the country when it comes to our collective dollars? How do we do that?
I think that it starts with conversations. My community that I live in, the Austin community on Chicago's West Side, is become way more diverse. And I think that us as African Americans and my Latino brothers and sisters, we need to make sure that we're getting to know our neighbors. It's that simple. Chicago across the board is very segregated, but again, communities are starting to be a little bit more intentional. There's starting to be a little bit more revitalization where we're starting to mix communities. And it does start with the conversation. Block clubs. I take it back to my block club. Let's make sure that we're getting people out there talking with one another, having conversation about what the needs of those communities are. You know, getting them involved in community programming and understanding the resources, the rich resources that are near and dear to those communities are going to be super important. We have to be able to help each other out. There's nothing wrong with helping your brother or sister out, even if they don't look exactly like you. I think that we need to form more alliances in the Black and brown communities, because guess what? We're all facing the same issues. It's not anything different. It's all the same issues. We have a lot more commonalities than we have differences. And it's time that we go ahead and make sure that we're forging closer bonds.
Absolutely. We have more commonalities than we have differences. We share family values. We share religious values. We share economic values. And we are two communities that have been depressed and suppressed. Two communities. We've been overlooked. We have been forgotten. And we've been silenced in many occasions. And as a united front, we have a greater opportunity to move forward and to change our economic face. More importantly, not only as a united front, but we have a generational obligation and opportunity today to work together, to collaborate together, to do things differently. It is desperately needed in our communities in order to bring that younger generation forward. I think that the years of looking at one another as different are gone. Okay, we live in a mosaic of cultures in this world, and we have an opportunity as human beings to see each other as brothers and sisters. And I think it's vital, it's important, and it's necessary. As a united front, we're stronger.
Thank you for that. So Tiffany and Peter has given us a lot of information. This is going to be the hardest question of the night or of the day. What's one step, just one step, you can tell every single person that's listening to you in this room that they can take to transform their dollars into generational wealth for tomorrow, starting today? What's one step they can take today to start building generational wealth for tomorrow? One step.
You know, I can think of many things, but I'm going to go
This is
ahead
why
and
it makes it
respect.
so hard, right?
I'm going to respect what James just said, and I'm going to say one of the things that we can do in order to start building generational wealth is going to be making sure that we're putting something away for later. Again, I think that's important. Even if you don't have all the money, you're not where you need to be right now, I think that it's super important to make sure that you're saving. Budget, save, invest. And so the vehicles in which I've done it have been through 457 plans, 457B plans, 403B plans. These are usually offered through your employer. Have those conversations about a deferred compensation plan to see if that's something that, a vehicle that would be available to you. Even if it's not, again, companies like Fidelity and, you know, there's institutions out here that can definitely kind of help you get to that saving place where you can put a little bit away. I started off with $10. If I started off with $10, I would say, go ahead and start off small or go at your comfort level, but make sure that you're putting something away for later because we're going to need it. As we get older, we're going to make sure that we need access to our money. I work for a retirement organization. It wouldn't be fair for me to sit up here and tell you guys anything different, but retirement savings is going to be crucial to your existence and being able to live a healthy and productive life in retirement. Absolutely. Sometimes people work so long because they can't retire. They haven't saved enough money. So if I had that one takeaway, start saving and start saving now. Don't procrastinate, don't delay, do it today.
Peter?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you said one step, and I'm going to say two. Okay, I'm going to say two because one can't go without the other. I talked about the 6 principles to creating wealth. Start with the first 4. Take care of the first 4. Whatever you do today, start with the first 4. Make more money, pay off your debt, create an emergency fund, and get proper protection. Whatever you do, go do that. You are not prepared to invest $1 if you have not done those 4. That's first and foremost. Thank you. Thank you. And then number 2, before you spend the next dollar, watching what you're spending that money on. Is it growing? Is it giving you any kind of return? Is it creating something for you in the future? Forget the Gucci belt. Forget the quinceañeras. Forget the family barbecues. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. Okay? We have 2 major dilemmas going on in America today. And every single one of us is suffering from one of them. One is how to make more money. And the other is how do I give that little or that a lot of money more life? Okay? How do I give that little bit of money more life so I can pay my bills at the end of the month? Or how do I give that money that I have saved up for retirement more life so I don't run out of money before I run out of life? Think about that for a second. Let that simmer in. So before you're spending $1, is it giving you any kind of return on your investment? You know, advanced communities only invest in items that return their money back. Okay? They don't buy the iPhone to carry an iPhone. They buy Apple stock. They don't go drink a Starbucks. They invest in Starbucks stock. They don't go buy a Tesla. They invest in Tesla stock. Let's think like advanced communities. We have the purchasing power. Let's utilize it correctly.
Very nice. So we have 6 minutes left. So I can ask them another question, or I could open it up to the floor. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask the panel? Thank you for coming in. What's your question?
Renita Dark. I would like to know how can you get out of debt? That's not an easy thing, especially when you don't have enough money to pay your debt. What's the next thing?
Okay, thank you for that question. That is an extremely difficult situation to be in, right? How can you pay off your debt when you don't have enough money to pay off your debt? Tiffany?
I've been in debt. I've been in a lot of debt, and it wasn't easy. I started off by talking about making sure that you create a budget. A part of creating that budget is understanding and recognizing what your expenses are, what you absolutely have to get out the door in order to continue to live. Those basic needs, they have to be met, right? And in order to go ahead and get out of debt, especially if it's credit card debt or other revolving installment payments, you have to make sure that you develop a plan. For me, it was making sure that I paid out the things that was going to be more of a higher interest rate first, getting those out of the way because the debt accumulation on those got me further and further in debt. So making sure that I addressed those things that were higher interest first, getting those down to 0 was important. Once you wind up being able to get an account down to 0, then you can work on the rest. Okay? It's not going to be easy, but sticking to a budget, sticking to that, and making sure your expenses don't outweigh the income that you have coming in. We have to live within our means. We can't live above our means and expect to get out of debt. It's hard, but you can do it.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. Any closing comments, Peter and Tiffany?
First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And thank you for your willingness to learn more, to be more and to become more. And keep attending events like this. They're vision expansion events that give you an opportunity to see the blind spots that you have not seen. We cannot answer all individual questions, unfortunately, but there's always an opportunity for you to meet with one of us afterwards, okay, in hopes that we can help you find a pathway to whatever that issue may be. Thank you for the opportunity, James.
You're welcome. Let's give a round of applause to Peter and Tiffany. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you for tuning in to Money Mondays with Melissa. We hope you enjoyed today's session and found value in the topic of discussion. Follow Chicago City Treasurer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay on top of all upcoming events. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Chicago Treasurer's Office at 312-744-3356 or visit www.chicagocitytreasurer.com. We'll see you next time for Money Mondays with Melissa.